You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. As always, up top, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those good things. Also, as you all know, we now have a Patreon.
We sure do.
We got a $2 monthly Patreon where you get a one-time shout-out plus access to the Patreon community. We have a $5 a month where you get all of that plus an ad-free bonus episode only for patrons.
Wow.
And at $10 a month, our highest tier, you get all of that. You get a shout-out every episode.
Are you kidding me?
You get the monthly free bonus episode.
Okay.
And you get a watch-along movie commentary with Maureen and myself.
You're kidding.
It's like sitting there watching a movie with us. And you know what September's movie is?
What?
Evil Dead 2, baby.
Oh my God.
One of our personal favorites.
That's such a good movie. What an incredible value.
Oh, yeah. And you know what I got to do? Let me give a quick shout-out to our Patreon subscribers.
Oh, our Creep Street connoisseurs?
Our Creep Street connoisseurs. These are our donators at the $10 level. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face, Via Longfist. The Texas Madman, Marcus Hall.
Ooh.
Oh, and I guess I should say, the tenacious Teresa Hackworth, my own mother.
No, she's tenacious.
And the newcomer, the British bone breaker, Bex Martin. Out of the UK. We are so excited to have you all here. In fact,
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
if you want to join them on that content, you just go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. But you know what? Today's episode also is a listener suggestion. Madman Marcus Hall, before he even became a Patreon subscriber, he requested this back a while ago. And we're now getting to it. And man, this is a juicy one.
You know what? I am so glad you said that because I would have completely forgot to give Marcus the shout out because I forgot that this was originally a listener suggestion.
Yes, it is.
So everyone, today we are talking about Ivan Milat, Australia's most notorious serial killer.
He's one of the big ones down there. Not a pleasant son of a bitch.
No, not at all. But this story is absolutely fascinating.
Right.
And it is one of those stories that just will absolutely infuriate you because you see like the incompetence and the just like absolutely stupid mistakes that were made in the investigation that like could have put this person away long ago.
Right.
It's just like insane.
Also, what was the source this week?
Oh my God, of course. Thank you for reminding me. The source was this book I read was written by someone that was actually involved in the investigation of Ivan Milat. And it was very interesting the way he would talk about it because sometimes he would be like, this investigation was absolutely bungled.
Right.
But then there were certain things where he would be like, no, you don't understand. People thought that was messed up, but like it was actually, we like did the best that we could or blah, blah, blah. And you're like, sir, you bungled it.
Right.
Okay? I'm not actually, he didn't bungle
right.
it.
Obviously, obviously this investigation is more than just one person, but.
And honestly, I was just kind of kidding before about him bungling it. This case was absolutely just bungled. I keep saying bungled, but it's just the right word for the situation. Truly. But this man, his name is Clive Small, who wrote this book and was an investigator. It truly does seem like he wasn't involved in the areas and the things that kept getting messed up. I don't know enough about how the Australian, police system works to know exactly like the ins and outs, but I think this guy actually did a good job. Okay, but the book is called Milat, Inside Australia's Biggest Manhunt, a detective story by Clive Small and Tom Gilling.
Very nice.
So yeah, I would absolutely recommend this book to anyone that is interested. But now that we got that sexy source told, shall we just pop off?
Let's dive right in.
Okay. January 15th of 1990, Deborah Everest and James Gibson, they were both 19, they were reported missing by both of their mothers in suburban Melbourne.
Okay.
They had both left Melbourne like a couple days before New Year's Eve of 89, and they were supposed to just like hitchhike and go around. First of all, let's just get this out of the way. Don't hitchhike, okay?
Don't hitchhike anymore.
Don't do it, okay? Because a lot of people got killed by the hitchhiking. Spoiler alert. So let's start our story.
Please.
January 15th, 1990. Okay. Deborah Everest and James Gibson, both 19, are reported missing by their mothers in suburban Melbourne.
Okay.
They had left like a little bit before New Year's Eve, so just like a couple weeks before.
Right.
And they were planning on going hitchhiking and traveling around. They were never heard from again.
Right.
So March 13th, a woman named Wendy Delsperger found a red backpack just a little outside Sydney. And in the backpack, she saw that the name was ripped out, but there was still a address written on there and a phone number. So she brings it home, calls the number, and it was James Gibson's mother's phone number, Peggy. So she found James Gibson's backpack.
Interesting. Okay.
They brought it to police, but nothing, it seemed at least to them that nothing much was done. Who knows if there was much investigation from this backpack, I don't know.
Right.
A little bit later in March, a newspaper ran a story about these missing people and about how a cyclist named Michael James was cycling around on December 31st, 1989, which was the day after those two were last seen, and he found a camera. And since he heard about this story in the newspaper, he brought the camera into the police. He hadn't originally brought it into the police because I think he was just like, hell yeah, I found a camera.
Right.
But then he was like, oh no. And he brought it into the police, and it was James's camera. So now James's backpack and camera have been found. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
Now let's fast forward a little bit. On January 25th, 1991, 22-year-old Simone Schmidl, she was reported missing by her mom in Melbourne because her mom flew from Germany to Australia to meet up with her daughter. This was like the plan, I guess.
Right.
To kind of go, I don't know if it was like a vacation or whatever, but went there to meet her, and her daughter didn't show up, which is like horrifying.
Oh, of course.
So she reported her missing, and she like reached out to the media, and she did all she could, but after a while she had to go back to Germany. You know, she's like, I can't just stay here. I have to work. You know what I mean? She was like, I can't just move here. Now, a year later, almost exactly a year later, on January 30th, 1992, 22-year-old Gabor Neugebauer and 21-year-old Anja Habschild were reported missing from Germany. So there was kind of a similar situation where they were supposed to come back from Australia.
Interesting.
And they never showed up at the Munich airport. Their parents looked into it. Turns out they never even got on the plane. And so both sets of their parents had tried to contact them too, couldn't get in touch with them. A few months later, on May 29th, 1992, a woman named Joanne Walters was reported missing in North Sydney by her parents living in the UK. And her travel companion, 22-year-old Caroline Clark, was also reported missing by her parents in the UK.
So right now we have this rash of missing persons, all of them not Australian citizens.
Exactly. They all seem to be travelers. The first two people that we've heard about in January 1990, they were Australian.
So they were Australian. Okay.
But they were also hitchhiking around.
But they were also
Australia.
hitchhiking. And I'm guessing it sounds like every one of these people has been young, like
yes,
at most in their 20s.
Exactly. Everyone's like 19 to like mid 20s, it seems like so far. Or not even like kind of like early 20s, honestly.
Right. Okay.
So it's all people of like a similar age. And it seems to be happening in twos a lot.
Right. So we're seeing a pattern. And that's interesting about the twos also. You would think like that would seem the harder task for a serial killer.
Exactly. That's kind of strange. But here's the thing that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. Apparently, a lot of people go missing in New South Wales, and often by choice. So that's something to keep in mind.
Interesting. Okay.
In July of 1992, 861 people were long-term missing, and about 400 more were recent cases. So there were a lot of missing people in New South Wales.
And you said by choice, meaning they just kind of want to drop off the grid sort
well,
of thing?
that's kind of the thing, is that some of them, it seems like, do that. They go to Australia to be gone, you know, like to be, or to run away. way. But, that can't account for everyone.
Can't account for everyone, surely not.
So, but that is something that kind of complicates it, is that
exactly
there are a lot of missing people there. So, unfortunately, it seems like sometimes missing persons cases aren't taken super seriously. So Caroline Clark, she was one of these people that was missing. She was from the UK. Her dad was just really apparently pushing really hard against the police force there.
Right.
And finally the cops were like, yes, we'll do something. So on September 19th, 1992, two men who were not like officers or anything, just civilians, they found a body in the forest of the Belanglo State Forest. Police came and they discovered it was a female with at least 14 stab wounds to the neck, chest, and back. Her ribs were cut, her spine and her cervical vertebrae were cut as well. The next morning, police found another female body about 300 meters away from the first body they found. Now, this body was also very decomposed, so it's hard to kind of get a ton of information.
This is all in the New South Wales region of Ulster. Okay.
This is all, you will see that most of what happens going forward is going to be in this Belanglo State Forest.
Right.
So like I said, this body was also very decomposed, but they could find 10 bullet entry wounds to the skull from 5 different angles.
Good God.
Back, front, each side, and the top. 10 .22 Winchester cartridge cases were found 3 meters from the body, and there was a red cloth wrapped around the head before shooting, and it seemed to be put on there before the victim was shot. And there were multiple stab wounds to the upper body and multiple slashes of clothing were made. So an autopsy was done, and it became clear that it was Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters. And just to really show you how fucked up this is, one of the fucking detectives of this case told Joanne's parents about the fact that they found her body in the forest. They told them that in front of the goddamn Sydney Opera House. Because they were just like, we're waiting. They're probably just walking around Sydney, just like being like, this is an actual nightmare, but let's look at this famous building. And then they get told there. Isn't that insane? So after that, some new detectives were assigned to the case because they were like, yikes, this is not going well. But November of 92, the New South Wales government offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest and conviction of the killer. And they even offered a free pardon to anyone that was an accomplice or anything, but that it had not actually committed the crime.
Dear God.
So they were really like,
they wanted this motherfucker.
Yeah.
It's obviously awful, no matter who it happens to. But when you've got, these people are traveling internationally, the last thing you want is for people to think, Christ, don't come here.
Right, exactly. So there was a few things that they were able to, or the police were able to put together based on how these murders were carried out and where it was and all of that. So they knew that the killer or killers, they didn't know, were familiar with the forest. And they also knew that they definitely felt very comfortable with weapons, whether that be guns or knives or something.
Right.
They thought that they were probably in their 20s to 30s.
Okay.
And that maybe there was some sort of sexual inclination to the murders, but it definitely was not by any means the motive. By the end of 1992, a lot of people had kind of started to kind of give up hope on this because it had been months and months and months since they heard anything, and they really didn't have many leads on any specific people. But in October of 1993, 2 more bodies were found, and the newspapers started saying, you guys, look, 2 more bodies were found in the forest. The police fucked up, and there's a serial killer on the loose.
Oh, God.
Which is true. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure that was causing panic, but it's like, that is what was happening.
Right.
Unfortunately, the second pair of bodies, they belonged to James Gibson and Deborah Everest. Those were the first people we talked about that went missing. The ones that were from Australia.
Right.
And the way that these bodies were found, the way that James and Deborah's bodies were found was just this man. He was a potter. His name was Bruce Pryor, and he just thought he knew the forest well, and he thought, you know what, I really don't think the police did a thorough enough search. I'm gonna look. And he found a skull.
Wow.
He was the one that found it. And the police claimed they did a very, very thorough search of this forest and that there was nothing. So the police obviously were like, fuck, this is super embarrassing.
Yeah.
What's the secret word of this episode? Bungled. We really bungled this. So they were like, okay, we got to do a actually thorough search because we said we did a thorough search in 1992 and we didn't clearly. So the police started another thorough search of this part of this forest. And on November 1st, 1993, they found the remains of Simone Schmidl, and she had similar injuries, and she also did not have her backpack with her, just like all of those other victims we have found.
Wow.
3 days later, they found another body, and that one was Anya Habschild, and she had similar injuries once again, and her spine seemed to be severed with a knife, and her skull was missing.
Ugh.
And not far away from Anya's body, they found the 7th body. And the skull had 6 bullet holes, and some of them were .22 caliber Winchester bullets. You might remember that from before. And nearby, there were airline tickets for Gabor Neugebauer, found in a plastic bag, and a money belt containing Neugebauer and Habschild's international students cards. So that was them. There was also nearby, there was a lot of cords, insulation tape, electrical tape, a leash. Yeah. So after the search, they were able to conclude that these killings took place between December 30th, 1989 and April 18th, 1992. So all of the victims were hitchhikers, and Liverpool, in Australia, not England, was a common point between all of their travels.
Interesting.
And it seems like there's a good chance that they were all picked up from there, or at least near there.
Very interesting. Okay.
All the bodies were stabbed multiple times, and 2 bodies had been shot multiple times with Winchester Winner bullets. It became clear that the killer, it seemed like he was spending more and more time at the crime scene as time went on.
So with each victim, he would linger longer and longer? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I see. Getting more confident.
Exactly. Maybe realizing, like, I'm not going to get caught. Like,
Exactly.
I don't need to rush out of here.
Interesting. Okay.
And all of their backpacks and some of their personal items were missing, but none of them were really anything like valuable.
Right.
So it was thought that those were more so taken as like trophies, and that robbery was not a motive. Because they're backpacking or they're hitchhiking, you're like, it's not like they're gonna have like $2,000 on them, or like
exactly.
Whatever.
And also consider the era, cell phones.
Right.
I mean, they were around, but not a lot of people had them. They're out in rural areas. People expect them to go off the grid for a few weeks, to not hear from people for a while.
Yeah. In 1993, the government increased the reward that we talked about before for information leading to the arrest and conviction. The reward was raised to $500,000, which was the highest reward ever offered in Australia to date. So on October 16th, 1993, the police visited the Belanglo Pistol Club to ask if anyone had seen anything mysterious or anyone suspicious or anything like that, because they knew that this murderer liked firearms.
Right.
So they thought, maybe there's a good chance that someone is involved here. Someone there said, you should talk to Alex Milat. I think he might have some information for you. So 2 days later, 52-year-old Alex Milat comes into the police station and gives the strangest interview, for real. In his interview, he said one day he was traveling down a road in Belanglo, and he was driving slowly because he didn't want to hit any wombats and kangaroos.
Right.
Which is just an exciting sentence for me to think about. He's driving along and he sees 2 cars kind of coming towards him.
Right.
That he sees a man in the front seat, and he is able to describe him so well.
Right.
He was talking about like kind of giving his, he said he had a prominent nose and an Adam's apple and a flat top style hair and mutton chops and all this stuff, and it's like you would not be able to notice all of this.
Right. This is what this Alex Milat guy is saying.
Said that he saw someone driving down the road looking like this, and he'll keep going and you'll see why it is of interest. But in the back seat, he said to have seen 2 women in their 20s, and he also remembered like a lot about them, like about like their hair color and how long their hair was. And
it's a lot from a glance, friend.
Yes.
This person just drove by him, and in a drive-by happened to notice crew cut,
Yeah.
mutton chops, girls in their 20s.
Right.
Like, and then also numerous facts about them.
Right. It's like not, it's very strange.
When a car drives by me, I can't even tell if it's a fucking Honda.
Oh, absolutely not.
I couldn't tell you who's inside.
No. He said that he saw the young women in the back seat gagged with a honey-colored piece of fabric.
Jesus God.
And he said that he made eye contact with the woman, and it seemed like she appeared up in the seat more, trying to get his attention. But Alex didn't do anything. Another car passed, and he also could see that there were women in the back seat gagged as well. And he was also able to like give a lot of information about what they looked like and everything.
So this guy's clearly spinning a fucking yarn.
They showed him pictures of Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters, and he said that they were them. How he would actually be able to do that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the reason why he didn't report this to police before, when he saw, women being gagged in the back seat trying to get his attention, he said, "I was of the opinion that it was just some young blokes taking some girls into the forest to have a good time, and I didn't give much thought of it being anything more than that." So
that tells you a bit about his
about
character.
who this person is.
Unless it's some role-playing thing.
Right.
Where they are willingly participating. And yeah, it says a lot about fucking Alex.
Yes.
The girl was gagged and screaming for help, and I thought, none of my business.
I
thought
they're
none of my
role-playing.
business. A lover's quarrel.
Oh my
A lover's quarrel.
It's not my place.
It's not my place.
So clearly these police were like, this is weird, but like, I guess it's like worth looking into kind of, And the timing didn't really work out with when he saw them and when Caroline and Joanne were last seen at King's Cross and all this stuff. So it didn't really seem like it was right. But later, two men who worked at Boral Australian Gypsums heard some very, very suspicious remarks from another co-worker named Paul Thomas Miller.
"I know who killed the Germans. There's more bodies out there. They haven't found them all yet. You could pick up anybody on that road and you'd never find them again. You'd never find out who did it either. There are 2 Germans out there they haven't found yet. Stabbing a woman is like cutting a loaf of bread."
So these 2 guys, at first they didn't really take it seriously, because they were just like, this guy's weird. But then after a while they were like, what in the hell is going on? I would have taken it seriously at the start, but that's me. So finally they were like, we should probably tell someone about this, especially because they knew the real deal. They knew that this guy's real name was not Paul Thomas Miller. It was Richard James Milat.
Oh, Dick Milat.
Dick Milat. He was doing that good old fake name thing. He was super weird, and people were like, yeah, this is definitely worth looking into. So police were looking into it. And also it is important to note that Richard Milat, as well as his brother, you might have heard of him, Ivan, they were both brought up as, people of interest or brought up as potential suspects before. So they had because the Milats were kind of one of those families.
Yeah, they were always on the wrong side of the law.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You hate to hear it. So they had enough to consider these 2 be actively investigating them, but they didn't have quite enough to arrest. So there was also a tip hotline about the backpack murders or the backpack killer. And a certain tip came forward. This one I found to be particularly interesting. This is a woman who will remain anonymous. We will call her Mary. That's what they refer to her as
in the book.
Mary said that in 1977, she and her friend Therese both were hitchhiking when they were 18 years old. And they were in Liverpool, and they
Liverpool, Australia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not that version of Liverpool.
There it is. Thank you. So they said they were hitchhiking and they accepted a lift from a man that they thought to be in his early 30s. And as he was driving, he started to get off the highway and he told them that he was taking a shortcut. Before they knew it, they were on a dirt road and he stopped the car. He said that he forgot to go to the toilet. And that's why he got out of the car. And then he grabbed Mary by the arms and said, "Okay, girls, who's first?" So Mary punched him in the face.
Okay.
And she and Therese ran out into the bush, and they just hid in the bush just quietly and motionlessly for hours until he just gave up looking for them and drove off. These are some smart 18-year-olds.
Ooh, Mary with that left hook.
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
And they both were just, okay, we are booking it, and they did. And so after this man had left, they walked to a farmhouse and they told the people who lived at the farm their story. And, thankfully these were good people and they were helpful, and they were like, oh, we're so sorry. They offered to take them to the police station, but the girls decided that they didn't really want to deal with it. They didn't want to report it. So the people that they were helping them just dropped them off.
Didn't want to report it?
They didn't want to report it. But a lot of people don't want to report things for many reasons.
Yeah.
You don't want
obviously.
people to find out about it because
Exactly.
you might be, or maybe they didn't want to get in trouble with their parents, or you know what I mean? Like all of these things.
What's good is that these gals got the fuck away.
Yes, exactly. So Mary called in and told this story. And what's funny is later that same day, unprompted and just by pure chance, Teresa called the hotline and told the story too. And that made their stories so much more legitimate, is because they corroborated each other. You know
right.
what I mean?
And not even intentionally.
Yeah. So they would be like, oh, wow, we got 2 calls that were the same.
Exactly.
So that was just like a very interesting call to get. And Mary and Therese, if I said Teresa before, guys, sorry. Right. So Mary and Therese were both shown pictures of a few different suspects. Okay. Because they obviously called them in because they were like, oh, this sounds very interesting.
Right.
Mary didn't, at least at the first time, she didn't say anyone wasn't the person, but Therese actually was able to point out Ivan and Richard Milat. She pointed out both of them. It was only one man, but she said one of those 2 look familiar. I don't know exactly how this works, but like their level of familiarity or certainty of who this person was wasn't enough that was like evidence necessarily, but it definitely pushed the investigators in the right direction of like more things to look for and things like that. So just a week after both of those calls from Mary and Therese, it was November 9th, 1993, the hotline got another very interesting tip. Joanne Barry said that in January 1990, she was driving along the Hume Highway, which, by the way, that was the highway that Mary and Therese were driving along with their attacker. Okay. They were driving along the Hume Highway, so the same highway and the same area, and she saw a car on the side of the road, and she saw a man running towards her, and that man was being chased by another man. Oh, okay. And she stopped the car, and the first man called out to her, and he said, "Help me, he's got a gun." So Barry let him in the car, and the man's name was Paul Onions. Paul Onions. Which is hilarious. And he went to the police, and he was hitchhiking. He was visiting from England, and he said that the man that had been chasing him was offering him a ride. And Onions, though, then got really nervous when this man who was driving him stopped the car and pulled out a gun. So 2 days after Joanne Barry called and made this report, a man from England by the name of Paul Onions called and told his story about what happened to him, and everything kind of added up. He was trying to hitchhike to Melbourne, and this man offered to give him a ride, and the car matched with what Joanne Barry had said, and Paul Onions did report it to the police there. I don't really know what the deal was, like why the police in doing the investigation hadn't really connected those dots. Yeah. It seems like there was a huge communication issue with this department, like kind of in the like beginning / pre-internet days where it was like they had different systems for like different years, and it seemed like some places were kind of connected with each other and some weren't, and like so I think things just like slipped through the cracks. That's just so scary to think because, that still happens today. Absolutely. And we have amazing technology. Like, can you imagine how often that happened before when there was no internet? If like a file just got lost, then, it was like, wow, that person doesn't have a record anymore. Right. And there was another hotline call that came forward. And she said, I don't know if this will help, but there's this guy that lives in my area and he's just like has a lot of guns and his name's Ivan Milat. I don't know. I just think he's weird. So that's just kind of an interesting little thing. So the issue was, before when they had looked up Ivan Milat's police record, there were some things on there, but nothing too crazy. But just like we were saying before, they switched systems in 1984. So they only saw his record from 1984 on. actually the guy who wrote the book, he told, like, he was delegating this, and he said to the guy, he was like, are you sure, like, you checked? And the whoever he delegated it to was like, yeah, you know, like, that's weird. And he was like, you're sure? He's like, totally. He's like, well, did you check the whole system? And he's like, hold on, I'll be right back.
Right.
And then he comes 2 days later, and apparently he comes in, like, smiling, being like, look what I found. And it's like, bitch, you could have done this like, are you kidding me? Like, this is not like some, like, great break in a case.
Yeah.
You did the bare minimum badly.
Hey, Chief, over here. You're never gonna believe this. You know that Milat guy? Total scumbag. I'm sure that's what an Australian police department sounds like.
That's what it's like. Yeah, it sounds like it's 1946 Brooklyn.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So they found out that Ivan had a record going back to 1964. Breaking and entering, stealing a car, accessory to a theft of a car, armed robbery, and a 1971 rape.
Jesus, God almighty.
Yes, at one point he got off on bail, and realizing that he had spent so much of his life in jail, he got out on bail, but he ran off to New Zealand, and he lived there for about 2 years, but then he got in trouble with the law in New Zealand, had to come back, and when he came back, they were like, you are arrested, sir. So when he got back, he was tried for the armed robbery and the rape charge. And because of some absolutely insane twist of I don't know what, but he was actually, he got off on those.
Jesus God.
Yeah. What happened was on April 10th, 1971, he picked up two 18-year-old female hitchhikers, Margaret and Greta, at Liverpool and wanted to drop them off at Canberra, which is the same place where he was doing this route all the time. We won't go into everything, all the details, but he raped one of the women and they both survived, but because of some really ugly just court shit, Ivan got off. So later, a traffic camera caught Ivan driving a 4WD, which matched the exact description of Joanne Barry and Paul Onions. That was the guy who was hitchhiking and ran to Joanne Barry, and he was the Englishman. And the traffic cam caught that because I think he ran a red light or something. So it's these little things, you know, you gotta, you just don't commit crimes, you know? But Ivan Milat really was not worried. And he was one of those guys who's just like, I'm never gonna get caught. And if I do get caught, I'm gonna get off. And a lot of narcissists and psychopaths obsessed with control feel this way.
Yeah, right.
But on top of it, he's fucking right. He has gotten off.
He has gotten off. He's fucking
done.
Right.
And he has committed these crimes for years and years and years, and no one has done anything.
Right.
So it's like, it sucks because you're like, fuck you for being so cocky. But then you're like, I mean.
And let's look at his fucking record. Yes, he has gotten away, but he's also got a fucking record as long as anyone's fucking arm.
I mean, most of his 20s were spent in jail.
In jail. So yes, he did get away on the big ones.
Right.
But it's not like this motherfucker has a clean record. He's not as lucky as he thinks he is.
Exactly.
And that's what's weird about this.
It's this delusional.
It's delusion. Yeah, he's not as fucking lucky as he thinks he is.
Yeah. When you get that combination, as well as like maybe a family that allows it, or you know what I mean? Like if you get that combination as well as the same like environmental factors.
Well, it sounds like the whole family were fuckers. Just a family of fucking dipshits.
It's interesting that, you know, they all kind of have that attitude.
The whole family's just a fucking freak show.
Exactly. So Paul Onions, our boy Paul, he comes back to Sydney to give a full statement because the police are like, okay, we need to like get in on this. And he points out Ivan Milat as his attacker as well.
Okay.
He's shown an image of him and he's like, this is the guy.
Wow.
Some people, though, believed and still do believe that these murders were committed by more than one person. It's kind of interesting. The author of this book, Clive Small, very much believes that it was just Ivan.
Right,
that Ivan acted alone. But a lot of people, including some family members of the victims, believe that it must have been two or more people. So that was still kind of like on the radar for the police.
Right.
Kind of looking for, Ivan Milat was still absolutely, prime suspect. But they were still kind of like putting their feelers out there for other people to see. Mainly his brothers. Because Ivan Milat was like, he was kind of a loner in that sense,
Right,
like,
right.
he just liked to shoot shit with his fucking brothers.
Right, exactly.
So early one morning, the police, they were like, we have enough info.
Right.
We have enough to arrest.
We can get this motherfucker. Right.
Yeah. And they show up and they got him completely surrounded. And they have kind of an interesting conversation.
Mr. Ivan Milat, is it?
No.
Is Ivan Milat there?
No, he's not here at the moment.
I'm a negotiator with the State Protection Group. I want you to come outside for the safety of yourself and whoever's in the house with you. Now, what I want you to do is come out the front door. I want you to turn to your left, go through the front gate. I want you to walk with your arms out, exposed from your body. You'll be met by some State Protection Group police who will be dressed in black. They will be armed, and I want you then, at their direction, to lie face down on the ground.
Okie dokie.
And apparently that's word for word how it happened.
Okie dokie.
Yeah. Just a lot of Remember that song?
It was a Crash Test Dummies song.
Yeah.
Oh my God. He just walked in on a Crash Test Dummies rehearsal.
Yes. Oh God. So finally he exits his home in, an embarrassing way. He leaves and they start searching his house and they find a lot of very interesting pieces of evidence. Even more interesting were Ivan's explanations of what they were.
Okay, let's get a few examples.
So, Ivan often used the name Bill. He called himself Bill Milat. He mainly used it, I think, to do crime, to be kind of mysterious. Just like his brother used Paul Thomas Miller. So they found a postcard in his room that said "Hi Bill" on it. And Ivan just was like, "Oh, that must have been a mistake." And the writer of the postcard asked whether Bill would be visiting New Zealand soon.
Jesus God.
And he still was like, I don't know.
Don't know what you're fucking talking about, officers.
Right. The police also found 38 .22 caliber bullets, the Winchester Winner bullets. And he explained, he just said, "Oh, you know what? I used to go shooting at my brother's place." And everyone was like, well, okay. And they found some Indonesian currency in his place, and he'd never been there.
Interesting. Okay.
However, Gabor Neugebauer and Anya Habschild, the people I talked about before, two of his victims, had traveled to Indonesia before they went to Australia. 2 rolls of black electrical tape were found, just like the ones that were found near their bodies. Okay. And in the bedroom that was used by Ivan's sister, there was Deborah Everest's sleeping bag. Okay, that was one of his first victims.
He kept the fucking sleeping bag?
Yeah. Also, there was a photograph dated 1992, and his girlfriend is wearing Caroline Clark's shirt, and she is one of the people that he killed.
Jesus.
So he took just like their things. He just said, "I don't know, it doesn't belong to me. I've never seen it," or "I don't understand." That's what he would say. Or he would just be like, give some some bullshit fuckery of a reason.
Right.
Also, they did find a .22 rifle with a rifle sight on it, and on the rifle sight it had Ivan engraved on it. So that proves that he has the type of gun that was used to commit some of these murders. So Ivan is clearly a very interesting guy.
Yeah.
I think we should get into a little bit of his backstory.
Please.
Let's talk about it. His father's name was Stefan Milat.
Okay.
And he was born in 1902 in Croatia. And he moved to Australia when he was 24. And then when he was 32, he met Ivan's mother, named Margaret, who was 14.
Dear fucking God.
So 2 years later, he's 34, she's 16. They get married, which is cool. And they have 14 children together.
So she was 14 when they met and had 14 kids.
Yeah, damn,
14.
Lucky number 14, baby.
Wow.
But Ivan was the 5th of the 14 children. He was born on December 27th, 1944. Because there were so many kids, Ivan's father could not financially support all of them. So all of the kids had to drop out of school early to work. So Ivan stopped school at 15. Around the time that he dropped out of school at 15, he also got super into guns. He kind of became a gun nut. He had some trouble with the cops growing up, but it wasn't until he was 17 that he really started to have trouble with the law. But then in 1964, Ivan started having an affair with his brother Boris's wife, Marilyn. And in 1965, Marilyn gave birth to a baby girl. And it was kind of an open secret throughout the family.
That it might be Ivan's?
Not that it might be Ivan's, that it was Ivan's.
Wow.
Yes. And this is kind of, I think, maybe the beginnings of realizing wow, I can really get away with a lot.
Right. Well, if your whole fucking family's afraid of you,
I can...
Why isn't the whole world afraid of you?
Yeah. And I mean, this man, Boris, his brother, he apparently, according to this book, I don't know the details or whatever, but it seems like he did his best to treat this daughter as much like his own daughter as he could,
right.
Because he already did have a daughter with his wife.
Right.
And so he did treat her as another daughter, but it started a huge rift between the two brothers, obviously. But the rest of the family was just kind of went along with it.
Right.
And it was never really openly talked about. It just seems like it was a mess.
So of the siblings, outside of Ivan, we've met Boris and Alex, right? have we met officially? And Richard.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't met any of the other, do any of the other siblings get involved in this story?
So that's what's interesting. A lot of people, kind of like I mentioned before a little bit, really think that another brother had to have been involved because for a few reasons. All of them, or most of them at least, had their own trouble with the law,
right,
and were also kind of fit the right demographic for what they were. A lot of these murders, these suspects, that they fit the MO for it,
right.
But you gotta remember, like we were just saying earlier, Richard Milat, who went by the name Paul Thomas Miller, who worked at that place with the coworkers, they came forward to the police saying all the weird stuff that Richard was saying. So then in October of 1975, Ivan starts dating a woman named Karen. Now, their story together is very fucked up. It's sad. It's just such a, Ivan was abusive and an absolute asshole. Right. And so we'll talk about some of it. We're not going to get to all of it just because it's not really pertinent to everything. We're not going to get to all of it right now, but if you are interested in just any more explorations of the story, I highly recommend to read our source this week. This is a very good book. So Ivan was very, very obsessive over Karen, and she was super controlling, and not only of Karen but also of her son Jason. Karen was 6 weeks pregnant when she started dating Ivan. So yeah, Jason is not Ivan's son, but he did treat him very complicated. It seemed like sometimes really kind of treated him like a son, or really spoiled him and loved him, and then other times was very threatening and aggressive, and so it's really weird, hard to kind of to tell.
Obviously, this person we're talking about is a monster, is a soulless, is a creature, essentially, who commits heinous acts. So to think of him also having affection for a child that's not, it just goes to show you how we all have fucking masks we wear.
Totally. And not saying that Ivan Milat was necessarily always that. He also was...
Right, of course.
He also, was very abusive and aggressive and controlling. But it's just weird that he did have at least moments where he was okay sometimes, So he would only give Karen enough money for food. That's it. He didn't give her enough money to spend money on. He also didn't have a credit card. He only had cash. So she literally could only buy food, but he was also obsessed about the cleanliness of the house and would scream at her if there was any dust anywhere.
Also fucking weird.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what these serial killers do, is that they want as much control as possible. That's really what they like is the control and the power and what they're able to do and what they're able to get people to do and how they can absolutely control their life. Like there's what's more controlling than ending someone's life?
Exactly.
You know?
You're right. You're
so
absolutely
it's
right.
like he makes these like tasks for Karen.
Exactly.
Because he wants to control her. He wouldn't, allow her to see friends. And he had threatened to dump hot coffee on Karen. And one time he threw a hot drink at Jason because Jason wouldn't take his asthma medication and it made Jason faint. And he also bought guns using his brother's name.
Now it's all coming full fucking circle.
Yep.
Clearly he does not. He has such power over these people that they will fucking protect him, and yet he'll do shit in their name. And
he needs them. He doesn't make it seem like he needs them, but he needed his brother to be able to get the gun.
Them. It's funny. He's in control, yet he's the fucking leech. He is the fucking... It's like a cult leader. Yeah. Everyone in the cult thinks they need the cult leader when the cult leader is needs a fucking leech.
Exactly.
They're a fucking bug. Step on the goddamn bug.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a t-shirt. I like that. Karen finally left or tried to leave him, but Ivan tried to burn down her mother's house.
Well, I'm glad she saw reason. I'm glad she came to her senses.
Oh, yeah. I could be wrong. I think that might have been the last straw, or maybe she went back to him one time and then they finally officially ended things. I'm not sure which one, but their divorce was finally finalized in October of '89. Now, this makes sense because this was just horrible for him.
Well, 89's when this whole thing starts, right? This particular spree.
Exactly, because in what it sounds like is he was just humiliated. That was just proof to the whole world that he could not control his woman.
Right.
That she got away. She left.
Damn.
That he couldn't hold her down. As Dylan said, you might remember that these crimes, this particular spree, was beginning in late 1989. So this timing lines up.
His ego. His fucking ego.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. Even though Ivan Milat's not I have a special hatred for cult leaders. I don't know why. I don't know. I've never been in a cult. It's not like I have a personal experience. I just hate anyone. I hate fucking anyone who says they've got the answers.
And just the way that they manipulate people.
I hate it.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe you're thinking of that because even though Ivan Milat was not involved in a cult, like he still used kind of those tactics to control people, to control his girlfriend, to control, or to his wife or his son or, you know, anyone.
Yep, and the second he didn't win, this shrimp scampy dick motherfucker goes on a killing spree.
Yep. So, moving back forward in time, back to where Ivan Milat has been arrested for these crimes. They're like, okay, you know what? We actually should probably look at all of the missing person cases from 1970 to 1992.
Exactly.
Like, we need to check this out, especially with backpackers or hikers or, you know, murders with a 22 caliber rifle, things like that. And it's not conclusive, but it seems like he could have very possibly have committed 3 of those murders, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 29-year-old. A friend of the Milat family, he said that in one morning in the spring of 1992, Ivan and Richard came home and talked about stabbing and shooting hitchhikers and showed a knife with fresh blood, backpacks, passports, and a machete and a revolver. But the guy that told the police about this had a head injury and he had short-term memory loss problems, and every time he told the story, it changed. So they couldn't really grasp it, but it was kind of an interesting thing, like that could have happened, I guess. And then that makes you think, okay, so then Ivan did work with his brother Richard. He also was a person of interest in multiple missing persons cases.
Right.
Over 4 months between 1978 to 1979, a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 14-year-old all went missing, and Ivan was a person of interest in all 3. Also, there was a woman named Debbie Pritchard who was 24. She was reported missing in March of 1982. In May of 1992, an excavation crew found her jaw and her slashed underwear. Someone came forward in 1989 saying that they found a bone in that same area where the excavation crew found her jawbone, but the police just assumed it was a cow's bone and threw it away.
Well,
and now they think that that was probably Debbie Pritchard's femur. Isn't that insane?
well, they kept the jawbone.
But the thing was, a few years before, someone had found
A bone in that area.
and they brought it to the police, and the police were like, this is a cow bone, and they threw it away. But now they think that that was probably Debbie Pritchard's femur. So because of the location of the crime, her age, a lot of these things that line up, it is thought that she could absolutely be another victim of Ivan Milat.
Oh, that's terrible.
Can't be confirmed, but it is possible. And it's another example of these things that get missed, that it's like, come on, just don't assume it's a cow bone. Check it out. Now, as I'm sure you can assume, Ivan Milat was convicted of these crimes.
Of course.
Finally, these backpack murders, and as well as the abduction of Paul Onions.
Right.
And I don't think that one he was...
Because Onions got away.
Paul Onions got away, but
Right.
it is believed, though, that he had every intention of killing him.
I absolutely, yeah,
Totally.
We'd
So-
have to just assume he was going to fucking kill him.
Right. So he definitely got convicted of abducting him, but I don't know if it necessarily was convicted of attempted murder because he hadn't tried yet, but he was going to kill him. So he has been in jail ever since. So in May 1997, Ivan tried to break out of jail. He did not succeed, and the person he tried to break out of jail with hung himself that night after they got caught. Ivan did not. Over the years, he did a lot of stuff like swallowing razor blades, somehow getting hacksaw blades in his room and hiding them, doing all sorts of things, trying to get weapons into jail for himself. So just had done a lot of stuff to try to break out of jail. Now, I would like to just quickly read what his jail cell in 2005 looked like. Ivan had his very own cell, and he shared a day room connected to his cell. His cell had a sink, an open shower, and a stainless steel toilet. The bed was on a concrete slab with a foam mattress. At the back of the day room was a tiny caged exercise yard. Isn't that the most amazing jail cell you've ever heard of in your entire life?
A place where fucking killers are supposed to be.
You know what I think it is that I think we're just so used to the American prison program. There's nothing. I've never heard of a jail cell having an outdoor space.
I see what you mean. I know prisons have outdoor spaces, but they're communal.
Right,
you
right.
mean he had his own...
it was small, but he still had a little area.
So he had a fucking back deck, essentially.
Kind of.
Oh, okay. Because I know they got yards,
right.
where you can, recreational yards.
Right.
But you got to share that with everyone else, yeah.
At one point, he was given a toaster and a TV in his cell as well. I don't really know why. I think...
Was he a fucking mob boss?
He did it because he got it for good behavior, because he said that he would light himself on fire if such and such didn't happen that he wanted to happen. That, he would just make demands, and then when he didn't actually light himself on fire or whatever, they were like, okay, thank you for not actually doing it. Here's a toaster, or here's a TV.
Okay, because here they'd be like, if you threaten to light yourself on fire, they'd be like, go ahead and do it. It's going to make more fucking room.
Or they're absolutely just going to put you in a medically induced coma.
And just fucking...
just give you insure.
What do you mean you're going to light yourself on fire? How do you have the means to light yourself on fire?
I don't know.
They don't just, when you walk in, you don't get a fucking orange jumpsuit and a gallon of gasoline.
Yeah.
You just, how do you even have the fucking means to light yourself on fire?
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. But this part, I think the next two situations you'll be interested in.
Okay.
Oh, but so he had the toaster and the TV, but the media found out about it, and everyone freaked the fuck out, so he got him taken away. In January of 2009, he cut off his little finger on his left hand with a plastic knife and tried to send it to a Supreme Court justice who had denied his appeal twice.
Well, that showed him.
He just cut off his own finger and put it in an envelope, and then he like tried to send it, and the fucking like the like COs were like, "There's a bloody finger in here."
What the yeah.
And then they took him to the hospital, but they couldn't reattach it.
Also, how do you then, when you're mailing something from the prison, how do you go be like, "Oh, ouch. Okay, yeah, I would like to have this sent to the courtroom at like how do you fucking
He's literally
what
an
happened
insane
to your
person.
hand, asshole?"
He is continuously was continuously applying for appeals and all of this stuff. Like, he's just like absolutely delusional. And in May of 2011, he went on a 9-day hunger strike because they wouldn't give him a PlayStation to, quote, exercise his mind.
Okay, I'm with him there.
Okay. He didn't eat for 9 days.
What year was this?
2011.
So what, he wanted a PlayStation 3?
I don't know at what kind.
He wanted did he want a PlayStation 3?
I don't know what kind of PlayStation, but he wanted a PlayStation.
What was he gonna fucking play? Like Jack and Daxter? Was he gonna, like,
I don't have
Ratchet and Clank? What's he gonna do?
But he took this hunger strike so seriously for 11 days that he went from approximately 187 pounds to 132 pounds.
So that's what 11 days of not eating will do?
I guess so. But the commissioner of the prison, Commissioner Woodham, said,
"There's no inmate on my watch who would ever get anything close to a PlayStation, particularly Australia's worst serial killer."
That's what he said, folks.
I'd give him a Sega Saturn, but that's where I draw the fucking line.
But on October 27th, 2019, at age 74, Ivan Milat died of cancer. And that's that. I mean, so that is kind of the long and short of Ivan Milat. Did he work alone? Did he work with someone? It changes depending on who you ask. Did the other Milats do a lot of fucked up shit? I'm sure they did. And I'm sure we could do episodes on them too. And who knows, maybe we will.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, that's going to wrap it up for Ivan Milat. Thank you so much.
Of course. Also known as the Backpack Killer.
The Backpack Killer. He's got a lot of nicknames.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you, everyone. Once again, if you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. But thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends, give us a 5-star review.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it makes us, 1, it helps us out, but 2, I'm not kidding, it makes us feel so damn good.
It does.
It makes us feel so good.
It does.
Thank you so much.
Appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Marcus Hall for requesting this episode.
Yeah.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Creep Street. Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.